welcome to the Ocean Impact Podcast. This is episode 6 of our Pitchfest 2022 series, where we chat to the founders and oceanpreneurs behind the Ocean Impact Pitchfest 2022 finalists. We are over halfway through now. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Helton. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Tim Silverwood. Can you believe it, Tim? Over halfway through.
Oh, almost that time when you get a little bit sad, isn't it, Amelia? Thinking that there's only another 4 episodes after this of the wonderful Pitchfest 2022 finalists.
So true. And look, we've got a great episode today with Angus Hudson. He's the founder of SLURRYTUB, which was the second runner-up of Pitchfest 2022 and runner-up of the inaugural New South Wales Ocean Innovation Award. Tim, I love hearing Angus chat about SLURRYTUB because it's a deceptively simple solution to a problem that so greatly affects waterways and the ocean.
That's right. And for many people listening in, you're going to be going, okay, SLURRYTUB, I've seen that. How is that an ocean impact innovation? But this is a problem that we really don't talk about. There is so much material that leaves building sites, which is super harmful to nature. And you might see it leaving that block of land and traveling down that driveway and entering the road or the stormwater system. And where does that go? That goes into local creeks and waterways and rivers and eventually the ocean. So all those materials are currently ending up creating a negative impact on ocean and waterway ecosystems. And along comes Angus, our SLURRYTUB hero, with an incredible solution that we're going to learn about today.
So true. And I mean, I guess the first thing we should answer for our audience listening, some will know, but some may not. What is cement slurry? It's called SLURRYTUB. So this is the key kind of problem that they're addressing. And cement slurry or wet trade slurry is what you get on a site, usually when you wash up tools and equipment. And it's basically cement water. So for those trades dealing with, in particular cement. And Angus, he's been a builder his whole life and he's seen firsthand the issue around wash up and disposal on site. And also, the thing that often happens, which is sometimes tradespeople taking shortcuts with the disposal of cement slurry. So that means, as you said, Tim, it, washes into stormwater drains, it gets in the waterways. And this solution is basically a filter in a tub that separates the water and the cement. And that means that once that water has drained away from the slurry mixture, it can be thrown in a skip, basically, because you end up, separating these two things and it's easy to dispose of more responsibly. So, I mean, I'm definitely oversimplifying it there, but what I love is a solution that everyone can kind of, get their mind around.
Yeah, and I love the origin story of this solution as well. I think we've had so many entrepreneurs come through our sort of ecosystem in recent times that are like Angus. They've just been exposed to a problem and they've looked around, they've asked that question, why isn't anyone fixing this problem? Oh, well, I guess I'll be the one to fix it, which I just love because imagine how it felt for Angus being so conscious and mindful of the impact that he was having as a builder and recruiting trades to build homes and to build offices or whatever it was. And he's now gone, you know what, I can no longer allow this to happen. I will be the innovator. I will take these risky decisions, and look at what he's created. And the business is still very much in its early days. And I just cannot wait to see this solution being adopted all around the nation and all around the world, which I'm sure it will do because it works.
That's it. And we have seen all the people, they've got a pretty dedicated following of builders and tradespeople that are using SLURRYTUB because it does work. And, Tim, to your point, the best people to create the solutions to these issues, these problems, these challenges are those that deal with it day in and day out. And those are kind of our, our oceanpreneur heroes, as it were.
That's right.
And I feel it would be terrible of us to not mention one of the highlights for me of learning about SLURRYTUB and what they do would be their official music video. Obviously, we want everyone to go look at the pitch video, which was great as well, but we might link in the show notes their official music video for anyone who enjoys a laugh, particularly our Australian audience and any tradies that might be listening today. it's safe to say that, our team Slack channel was pretty pumped when we saw the music video. Isn't that right, Tim?
Yeah, it is very creative. We love creativity when it comes to engaging. What I am guessing is a pretty hard to engage audience. If you know what the trade industries are like, perhaps it's similar in your nation where you're tuning for this, but maybe not stereotypically the most engaged in environmental issues. They're there to get the job done and go home and have a bit of fun outside of their hard work day. So when you see this very creative way to engage prospective customers and show basically the industry that you can be really cool by being conscious and trying to reduce your environmental impact of your operations. So very clever. It wasn't part of the judging panel's kit in order to assess whether this was a winning startup or not, but it certainly is something which made us all feel very proud and stoked to work with a company that gets creativity alongside impact.
Love it. I think people are going to really enjoy this episode. Guys, as always, let us know your thoughts. Leave us a review. You can reply in a variety of the podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube if you happen to be watching. But thank you so much for listening. Thanks, Tim, and enjoy this fantastic episode with Angus Hudson.
Thanks, everyone. I'm so excited to have on the Ocean Impact podcast Pitchfest 2022 series, the second runner-up of Pitchfest 2022 and the runner-up in the New South Wales Ocean Innovation Award, Angus Hudson, founder of SLURRYTUB. How are you, mate?
Oh, very well. Thank you, Tim.
This is super exciting. I think people are going to get a lot out of this episode, and so much of that comes down to your innovation, but also to your story. So why don't we start there? Give us the little spiel about what it is SLURRYTUB is and the problem that it's solving.
Okay. Look, essentially, it's a filter. It's an engineered filtering system that's designed specifically for wastewater created on building sites when tradesmen are using cement-based products. So that's, my background is I've been a builder my whole life. And as a builder, I've witnessed the problem from site to site and always thought, this isn't the best practice, particularly on smaller jobs where you'll have contractors that tend to wash up wherever they choose. You are providing a building site. Often there's limited access to space because you're in someone's backyard or front yard. And I guess the problem was, where do people wash up this wastewater and how do you dispose of it? Through my sort of experience, it's always been a problem. And to solve the problem, I designed this filter or came up with this solution. The filter simply separates the sediment from the cleared water.
It's so cool, and everyone needs to go and check your pitch video or look on your website to see this in action. But yeah, just sort of going back to this, because people out there are going, okay, so SLURRYTUB, I can see what it's doing, but what is that ocean impact? And you got to tell us all about the nasties that are actually in the stuff that is getting cleaned up and how that is currently making its way so easily to stormwater systems, to our creeks and our rivers, and ultimately into the ocean.
Yeah, look, I guess essentially the problem lies within the cement and what contaminants are within cement and how they are so easily, as you say, transported into the shallows normally of any ocean outlet that is in any city. The heavy metals that are in cement are there's zinc, there's cadmium, there's mercury, arsenic. There's a lot of contaminants that are contained within this wash water that are really easily transported through the wash water into the ocean. And I guess, what I was really surprised at or really happy to discover was that by filtering the water, we could almost reduce the cement contaminated water to Australian drinking water standards other than chromium and pH. But we could remove 99% of the contaminants from the water, which gave us the ability to be able to allow that water to run into a garden, not necessarily into the stormwater system, but to actually find a place, or better, to reuse the water on the same building site. So you can complete the loop.
And I want to talk a bit further on about the actual design and the innovation and how you went about the process of designing something so effective. But yeah, so here you are. You've been a builder for a long time. This thing must have been niggling away. I'm guessing that you did whatever was sort of best practice, or you deemed best practice to deal with the problem, or encourage those contractors to do so. But yeah, give us a little insight to what's currently a solution to get rid of slurry and to clean up gear at the moment, and what that sort of results in.
Well, look, the current practice is to try to keep firstly, you're not allowed to let anything off a building site. Like, by council guidelines, you're not allowed to wash your car on the street. So theoretically, no liquid should ever leave a building site. But in practice, time after time, I would turn up to a building site and see my concreters or my bricklayers hosing down the area where they're working. And that water is obviously going down the infrastructure that's within the property, ends up in a stormwater system, whether it's through a drain within the property or overflows into the footpath. But the way it's managed at the moment is very poorly, but based on what I've seen over my experience, and through doing an environmental trial with the City of Sydney, which allowed us to access 40 building sites and let them experiment by using SLURRYTUB as an option. Now, that gave me great insight to what other builders were doing. A lot of builders were doing nothing. Many builders tried to catch the water in buckets or maybe things like a kid's swimming pool because they're, to have the volume capacity, or even use a wheelie bin and fill it up. The problem with that, of course, is that it fills up really quickly and then it just overflows. So the idea of filtering the water as you capture it actually is a fairly, filtering it to the degree we filter it is a new concept. The council guidelines that currently exist ask people to arrange hay bales in a semicircle and to wash up within the hay bales. Now, that is a filtering solution, but the problem with that solution is that it allows any cement particles to just go straight through the hay bales and out onto the street. So I guess what it's about is refining this filtering system, making the filter, our filter is 25 microns, which is small enough to capture the particles of cement that carry the contaminants. And that was really the moment where I thought, this thing is great. I can keep working on this problem, and we're getting to a solution. A lot of my time in the early days was working out how to filter the cement for the water to leave clear.
And I suppose to make it so that it was functional, right? I'm imagining that there's a bit of a barrier to adoption around this. And, you've obviously got all your experiences and relationships. But yeah, why don't we were going to talk about you, but let's go straight to this sort of design and innovation process. How did you go through those steps to make sure, A, it worked, and B, it was going to be adopted?
Okay, so, from the idea, I engaged with a team of industrial designers to actually push the process further than I possibly could. I began the process by, literally in my front yard, experimenting with wheelbarrows full of slurry and looking at the problem from a cement mixer, which is where most trades start the process. The bricklayer or the tiler or any cement render, anyone who's using cement will usually use a cement mixer or mix it by hand. But it became really apparent that the wheelbarrow was the vessel that was used to transport the cement, and usually the wheelbarrow was the thing that got washed out at the end of the day. So my first problem was to learn how to actually remove all the sediment from the wheelbarrow to capture it, not allow any to escape, and for the filtering process to begin immediately. So I went through the whole process initially before I engaged industrial designers, and found it quite frustrating to actually work out what would be the best medium to use to filter the cement. So I began with simply sponges and rags and worked through geofabrics, and then got onto paper. Now, the paper became the secret to the way it works, much like a coffee filter works, which is to capture sediment So we started experimenting with paper, found different papers that had to be wet strengthened, that had to be certain microns. And I also wanted the paper to be biodegradable. So it wasn't a plastic coated paper, but it would break down if it was, once it's introduced back into the environment. So yeah, that's how it all began.
And so obviously with the paper, being, I'm guessing if it's on its own, it's quite fragile and can be perforated, but that's where I suppose that perfect tub and the way it just sits over there like a little sock was that final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, look, I guess what it boiled down to was the paper being supported to allow it to, hold up to 10 to 20 kilos of solid waste, and that tub was designed specifically to hold 50 liters of water. Now, 50 liters is the average wheelbarrow full of water, if you like. And the minute the liquid hits the slurry tub, it starts draining immediately. So as you're tipping it in, it starts to drain. So you can add more as the process is progressing. Yeah, the tub was designed specifically for support for the filter, but also to drain as quickly as it possibly could. Also to allow the user to capture the water if they needed to. So there's specifically the bungs that are used to control the water are compatible with hose fittings, regular hose fittings. So you can attach a garden hose to a slurry tub, let gravity work, put that hose in a bucket or in any other receptacle to capture the water that you're actually filtering, which means that at the end of the day, you've got a bucket full of clear water and the water comes out almost as clear as drinking water to recycle on the site the following day. That process also eliminates the hosing process that a lot of contractors use, which is if they wash up on the street or somewhere else, that they have to hose the surface down that they're working on. We estimated that 2 to 3 minutes of hosing created about another 50 litres of water that was being wasted.
So good. And so obviously you got the draining process happens. It becomes a rather firm mass of paper-bound, dried up slurry, and then that just gets disposed of in the normal processes of getting rid of building waste off the site.
Yeah, that's right. The hardened waste in the slurry tub filter is then disposed of with your dry waste. We are looking at the possibility of, once we have scale, at collecting that dried waste and giving that back to a facility to recycle into other building products.
So cool. All right, now we're going to talk about you because these stories are just so fascinating. I picture this this builder and these ideas are ticking away in the back of his head, and finally he starts tinkering in his backyard and his shed, and we end up with this great innovation. But aside from being a builder who clearly had a conscience and thought about this, where does this all really come back to at the end of the day? Like your passion for the ocean, for the environment. Like, why would you go out on a limb to work so hard to create this business? What is it about you that makes that possible?
I mean, I think it's an interesting question. As well as being a builder, I love sailing. I've always surfed. I've always loved the ocean. We live on Sydney Harbour, and I spend a lot of time in the water, sort of with, our kids are now in their, late teenagers, but as children spend a lot of time. And I have seen remarkable progress in Sydney Harbour in terms of the cleanliness that through different groups, and the fact that over the last 10 years, even the Parramatta River Group have done a great job in cleaning up Sydney Harbour. It just occurred to me that as a builder and working on with a lot of people that are interested in preserving the environment, it did become a little bit of a responsibility to me to help contribute to the cleanliness of Sydney Harbour. And that's where it started. I guess the idea started with every small bit can help, and that every building site that produces 50 litres, which doesn't seem like that much of wastewater, that 50 litres actually has loads of contaminants in it. And if you're in a street, often in the eastern suburbs, there are 10 building sites in any one street at any moment. And I kind of quickly thought, that's 500 litres if there's 10 building sites going. And suddenly the volumes of liquid that escape into our stormwater systems become quite relevant. I think one of the interesting things I noticed was that these Sydney Harbour seahorses that are often prevalent and found amongst the nets that protect the beaches from sharks are now the habitat of these seahorses. And I was thinking, where did these seahorses live prior to sea nets? And of course, they lived in the seagrasses that were always found in the shallows. The seagrasses are now very few and far between, and they're still decreasing. And that's predominantly due to the fact that sediment that is carried through the stormwater system smothers the sea life, the aquatic life that exists on those foreshore areas. And so I guess it was just through my interest in being in the water and participating in recreation in the water, having the opportunity to observe these things, and then thinking, actually, I can do a little bit to help if I start to take care of my own building sites, which led to the idea that everyone's got this same problem.
I love it. Okay, so let's go to this side of the story. So you've done all the tinkering, you've utilized the industrial designers, you've figured out the perfect way of it, and then you've got a product, and the product is now ready to go to market. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, launching the product and getting those first customers, and that can be maybe a little prelude into where you are now and where you're heading.
Yeah, look, it was interesting because as a builder, I still had to keep working as a builder, and SLURRYTUB was my second interest. It was my sidekick. So I, spent a lot of time looking for the right partner to finance the business. So I went to, I flew around. I met with teams from hardware chains to wheelbarrow manufacturers, trying to find a partner that would fit. I eventually found a venture capitalist group that put money into the business. That allowed me to go from prototype. So I had actually got to the stage where I had a prototype to go into production. That was obviously where the business began, and going to a manufacturer to actually make the tub, and manufacturers to actually make the filters. So I began that process. I engaged a CEO for the business to run the business for me, to allow me to keep building. And through the CEO and myself, we worked to actually create this product in Australia. So we use a factory down in Victoria to build the slurry tubs. And we used another Australian company to source the filters. And so we began by actually building the product. And then we began to look to distribute the product, which was, at first a little bit tricky, but as you move through, I think using social media platforms gave us a little bit of exposure, and it wasn't long before Mitre 10 became aware of us, and they decided that they would use SLURRYTUB on, in their or carry SLURRYTUB. And then their affiliation with The Block, which is, a big TV program, was where we sort of first got a lot of exposure, where the contestants on The Block were all handed a SLURRYTUB and said, you guys have to be careful the way you wash up with your cement products. And that gave us some great exposure to begin the process of distribution, which is now, well and truly set with Mitre 10, National Tiles, Total Tools, and other smaller masonry, sort of wholesalers that sell bricks and sand and cement. And a lot of these companies are now carrying our product.
Awesome. I do want to talk a little bit more about the marketing and social media and those kind of opportunities that you mentioned before there. But yeah, I just wanted to go back a little bit because that is fascinating. I imagine there's a lot of people who've been inventors and tinkerers who've developed a prototype, and I don't actually know what the normal process would be, going out trying to find your first customer. But this strategic decision, I suppose, to find the right partner who would invest and then also give you the capacity to then design the business to be run so that you could still go and be a builder. And it just made me think that that was beautiful in its execution by the sound of it. Was it a strategy to build a successful business, or was it simply just the default way because you had such demands as being a working builder?
Look, it's the strategy was to build a successful business. Working as a builder, I mean, It actually all happened in the middle of COVID, where I built the business. And what I found was that working as a builder during COVID became very, very problematic due to one member of your staff getting it, and that would close down the site for 3 weeks while they recovered, and then another member would get it. And slowly but surely, I found building really frustrating through that period, which actually enabled me to spend a good year or two on working primarily on SLURRYTUB to develop, our marketing team, to develop, our customers, to actually engage with organisations like GECA, which GECA is the Good Environmental Choice of Australia. We engaged with them because we wanted to get certification and clarity on what we actually do provide. Going through that process probably took 2 to 3 months of regular correspondence between scientific laboratories, GECA staff who wanted to know what our claims were, and to actually get those claims certified by GECA was quite a process, which I felt was really important to have any product that's an environmental product as have a certification against it. So I feel like my input was fairly intense in the very beginning of the business, engaging with with good staff. So we've got 3 on the staff, and they're all excellent and very, very, they're great believers in the product, and they're very dedicated to it. They spend a lot of their time, thinking, talking, educating other people about the problem. I guess it's through the staff that I've been able to expand the business in a way that I couldn't do. And that, gave me the space to go back to building, because I don't draw an income from SLURRYTUB, to allow me to continue with what I do, but to now know that this business is up and running and starting to produce good income that was my goal.
Yeah. I just think people are going to be quite sort of fascinated to know that is a way, right? You can, because everyone thinks, how am I going to quit my day job to build my startup? And there seems to be a way. And of course, you had COVID, you had this luxury of a couple of years to invest a very important and strategic amount of your time and energy. But there is a way to finance it and to run it and still do your day job. And then obviously the long-term horizons can be really exciting as the business grows and builds.
Yeah. I think I was really fortunate with timing to meet the right partners. It was, turning a lot of stones and asking a lot of people, trying to promote it. Obviously, you've got to talk about it the whole time. I felt like it was dominating my headspace a lot of the time, but it was something I was very passionate about. So it was something that it was easy to talk about and easy to promote. I just hoped I didn't bore people to death about it.
Let's go into promotion, because that to me seems to be, there's a lot of things that are beautiful about the business and the product you've created, but the way that it is being marketed, and being an Australian male with, of course, a lot of friends that work on building sites and trades. I haven't had to do a lot of that in my life, although I am renovating at the moment. But I just think what you've done around promoting and building, every brand needs to somehow find their tribe and build that tribe. And there would be I can imagine no other more challenging job than trying to convince trades to do something more, a bit onerous, for the sake of the planet. So just tell me a little bit about how you've done that and what seems to be working. I just feel like it's a conversation that people are going to want to hear a bit more about.
Yeah, look, I guess initially I was, a little bit scared about the whole thing, going to bricklayers who are big burly blokes and going, hey guys, what about washing up in this? And getting a response that was like, yeah, good on you, mate. We're pretty busy, don't annoy us. But in fact, I found the exact opposite. I was really pleasantly surprised. And a lot of this happened to me because I engaged with the City of Sydney on their environmental performance trial. And that gave me the opportunity to go and speak to lots of tradesmen that weren't my tradesmen. My tradesmen, were like, yeah, sure, Angus, whatever. But they didn't really want to engage in it because they saw me as the builder, not as a SLURRYTUB guy. But having the opportunity to talk to a lot of different trades, builders, and even clients at the end of the day really gave me a lot more self-belief and belief in the product, because I'd go into these sites and a lot of the builders would say, oh yeah, we were actually fined last week for slurry going out on the street. And I was like, oh wow, that's, a problem I've had before. And I know that that's a good sign because it means that the enforcement's there and the councils are actually following up on this problem and, and enforcing it. So I guess slowly but surely, I found people that were very, very willing to be part of a trial, and more than that, wanted to actually keep going and using the product. So once you have that thing where you've got a bricklayer that's running a team of 10 bricklayers that's going, we're happy to talk about this because we'll take it to site, and the builders that we're building for are really happy that we're not leaving a messy, slurry-covered backyard or concrete slab that carries mud and, different contaminants all around the site into tradesmen's cars. So it became a product that actually solved the safety side of a building site as much pain as well, because slippery sites covered in slurry are really dangerous spots. And I think, a building, like I know, if I was building, or I'm sure you would feel this, if your builder is keeping a very neat and tidy site, that the building is actually being done very well. Whereas if you see a sloppy, muddy, dirty building site, your impression of the builder is going to drop. So I feel like that particular element carried the process. So to get social media of these tradies who are doing work all over Sydney, a lot of them, are surfers and people that love the natural environment. And they became my greatest ambassadors because they were the people that were saying, hey, SLURRYTUB's great. It's a great product. It's easy to use, saves us the problem. We know when we haven't got one, we're doing the wrong thing if we're tipping it down a drain or into someone's garden. So it actually manifested itself, if you like, the fact that I had all this great input from tradies that enjoyed using the product.
A good news story all around. That really is awesome. So you've obviously got, those early adopters and pioneers and those that are convinced now and happy to. But where does the sort of the policy piece fit in the puzzle? I'm guessing, like you said, there's heavy fines and there's all sorts of repercussions if you don't do the right thing. So where does policy link up with the potential for your business to really expand?
Look, it's a really interesting question. I think that advancement in technology in building has been happening for many, many years. And as the building industry advances and techniques become, more about the architectural design of houses, then more and more cement and concrete is being used. It's the biggest material used in the construction industry. I feel that the advancement of the technology in taking care of the waste hasn't advanced as much. So I guess what I'm trying to do is educate policymakers that there is a better solution than, for instance, arranging hay bales in a semicircle to actually filter the water. Now, I'm getting good, winning the award, that was sponsored by the New South Wales government gave me a great opportunity to talk to our environmental minister, who passed me on to the EPA. I've been engaging with the EPA, and they're very, very, they hadn't heard about the product, so it was interesting to explain to them, the problem, which they're very aware of, and they do have many campaigns. Every 3 months, they run a campaign to assess building sites throughout New South Wales. They hadn't heard of SLURRYTUB. They were thinking it's a great idea, but they can't promote it because it would be seen as promoting a private business and giving me an advantage. So what I do is I go back to councils. Many local councils are engaged with our product, and I look to educate them, to give them the opportunity of knowing there is a product that they can suggest that anyone who's having trouble satisfying their requirements of containing sediment within their building site or filtering it, there's an option, rather than using using hay bales or, a container to keep the slurry. You can actually filter it and allow that water to go into the ground.
Very cool. All right. The next question, the next sort of area of the podcast we like to go into is just, your key achievements and also your key challenges there. So I'll give it to you whether you want to talk about the achievements or challenges first, but just a little bit, I guess, what's happened in the last few years.
Well, look, I guess the business is only 18 months, a little bit more than 18 months old. So, starting with nothing, getting a product to the market within the first probably 4 months of our existence was a huge achievement. I remember the day we started saying we're for sale, and we had a website where people could engage. And then, I'd look at it and I'd say, how many did we sell this week? And they'd go, one. And I'd go, oh my God, how's this gonna become a thing? We've sold over 5,000 now, so it's a thing that's definitely starting to pick up. But actually making a product that I was very, very happy with was the first big achievement. Then engaging with different hardware chains was and having agreements with these chains to distribute our product was another big agreement, another huge achievement. I feel like the award we won through the Ocean Impact Organisation made me personally very, very satisfied with what we'd done. And to get that kind of recognition for me was a huge achievement. That represented so much to me, that we were actually recognised as doing something for the environment. Since then, which was in November last year, I went across to Las Vegas to the World of Concrete, where we launched our product in America, in the USA. And that launch proved very, very successful. We got a huge amount of interest from both end users and resellers that were very interested in our product. And since then, we've signed an agreement with a major distributor in the United States that will now carry our product. And I feel like that's probably, as the months tick by, the achievements keep coming. But that latest achievement of now being available in the US as well as Europe, for me is huge, because it just proves the worthiness of this product. But it also talks to me about this problem being a worldwide problem.
Yeah, and let's go there just quickly. I mean, there's obviously key markets that you can look at next, and getting into the US is a huge one. But is the sky the limit? I mean, is there certain cultures and regions that don't build in a way where they couldn't utilize SLURRYTUB, or is it literally a solution that could be used anywhere there's concrete being used?
It's a good question. I feel like it's the latter. I feel like this product, it's a low cost, like in terms of what it offers, it's a filter that cleans dirty water, separates the dirty water and essentially reverse engineers it and makes clean water. I feel that certainly in the developed world, there's a great market for it, because there's a lot of concern about the state of the environment and the fact that it is in poor shape. And the state of the environment report that came out last year made it really clear that we really have to start acting. And I feel like in the first world, it will be a product that becomes normal to use. In other developing countries, I'm sure it will start to become a thing. I'm not expecting that market to be a market that carries the business at all in the early days, but I'm sure a version or our product will become something that people start using all over the world on building sites.
Fantastic. Oh, you get me excited. And just going back to being so appreciative of the accolades with Pitchfest and with the New South Wales Ocean Innovation Award. You were just a pleasure to have on the podium. You were so happy, you were so appreciative, and it just made us feel good about the work that we do too. So the feeling was rather mutual there. Let's just talk a little bit about the future for you. You've probably spoken quite a bit about it, even then just talking about those distribution deals. But anything else in the pipeline for the next 12 to 24 months that you wanted to share on the podcast?
Look, yeah, growing the business is the major. Making it a financially successful business is now very important, because people have invested money into it, and I want those people to, reap the rewards down the track. I guess developing new products is something that we're starting to put a lot more time into now. That this business, particularly the size of the actual slurry tub, is often questioned, because people who have larger volumes of slurry often say, it's not big enough. It's not a very simple problem to solve, because the actual logistics of a piece of paper being the filter, mean that if it gets too big and if it's perforated, it's too heavy to carry, if it's full of slurry, become a further problem. But there are ways around that, and we're looking at developing a larger product. We're also looking at developing a range of products that could assist around. For instance, the fact that it can be used as a washout tub, and when I say tub, more as a sink for washing tools out than a tub that sits on the ground. So a lot of people are now starting to use it. In fact, yesterday a tiler shared a video where he's got it sitting on a table and a bucket underneath it. And at the end of every day, he simply washes all his tools into the slurry tub and the water's collected underneath in a bucket. And I feel like the development of the product to actually facilitate that in a really simple way is something we're wanting to do sooner rather than later. So, I guess it's just trying to make it easier for trades and people who are wanting to use the filter to protect the drainage or the environment around where they're working is what we're trying to assist with.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Next question, some key learnings from your journey as a founder that you would like to share. There's a lot of people tinkering away or with big ideas and wondering how on earth they turn it into a successful enterprise. So yeah, just some key learnings from your journey, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I remember the actual moment I thought I'm going to develop a product was when I turned up at a building site. I saw a wheelbarrow lying on its side. I saw slurry all over the ground, and I thought I've got to help with this problem, and every builder would suffer it. It took me, I think, from having that thought, it took about 2 or 3 years to actually start, doodling on paper, designing things, coming to the conclusion that you could design something to assist. I feel like a lot of it became, when do you actually fire the arrow of I have a product? And that became something that was in my head, that I didn't want to launch something that wasn't fully, complete in its addressing of that problem. So I feel like a key part for me was to actually keep developing until you're actually satisfied that you have the right solution for the problem. And that process did take that's when I talked about working with industrial designers and using people that were really well trained in the field to help solve this problem. And it was a collaboration. It's not like I just did this thing on my own. I was working with other people that were very passionate about solving this problem. So I feel like collaborating with other people, getting to the moment where you go, we are solving a problem, and then carrying that on to create a prototype when, and when I say a prototype, there were many, many, many prototypes, but a prototype that we believed was something that you could market. And then once we're at that point, looking for funding. And I feel like if that had been a premature moment, we wouldn't have got the funding we got. So I feel like just keeping your powder dry, if you like, until you are so satisfied that what you've got is the best possible solution for the problem, really was a factor in the product succeeding.
Was that innate for you, or did you have some mentors and advisors around you that were sort of saying, Angus, wait, or is that just the way it transpired and what felt right in you?
No, it was, when you say, was there one person? No, there wasn't one person. But I discussed this problem with, many people who are quite advanced thinkers, business people that understand the way businesses work. It certainly was something where I was, always champing at the bit to release. But I feel like holding it back actually made me aware of other other problems that were associated with this little problem. I think, definitely collaborating with people that surrounded me. My family became really involved in it and we discussed it a lot. And their feedback was tremendous for me because it gave me, really their insight into the fact that this problem was real. It needed to be solved properly, and taking your time and solving it was the right way to do it and not just rushing out with anything.
Oh, so enjoyed this conversation and working with you, mate. So we're about to wrap up. So the last little portion is a chance to share anything that you wanted to talk about today that you haven't had a chance to talk to yet, and then finally just directing people where they can learn more, buy the product, follow your journey, etc.
Okay. Look, I feel like there's not a lot more that I need to share. I feel like most people want to do the right thing, and I feel that if they understand that there's a solution for a problem, and that it's an inexpensive solution. It's not a big cost to actually spend $6 a day on a filter. So I'm really, quite. I mean, it's such a simple problem. It's such a simple solution. I don't think there's a lot more to explain about that. I guess moving forward, I'm excited about the growth of the business. I'm excited about developing more products. I'm excited about the fact that, builders are very, very, aware that they can save further contamination of waterways by really simple measures, and that they're really willing to do it and share it.
Yeah, that's been a beautiful takeaway from this conversation today. I came in with some perceptions that you were really up against it, trying to convince people, but you're right. People are innately good and they want to do good. And if it's a simple solution and it's not going to cost the earth, then they will be your biggest fans. So just a huge thank you, Angus. Big congrats to you and the whole team on the award and where to next. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Guys, we hope you enjoy this episode. Please leave us a bit of feedback. It really helps us out. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a review. On Spotify, you can let us know what you loved about the episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to drop us a comment or hit the like button. It means a lot.